Welcome to Her Life Unscripted podcast, inspiring burnt out, stressed out, and stretched thin women to embrace the unscriptedness of life. Hosted by Anna Osborne.
Hello, lovelies, and welcome to Her Life Unscripted, episode 35. I'm really excited to be here with you guys today. I did something that I really needed to do, which was instead of this morning picking up my laptop while my kids watched their little morning cartoon, I actually got myself dressed and ate some breakfast and got them ready, and we got out the door and I went to the gym. And so I feel really energized right now. Today feels like a really, really busy day, but I kind of mentally prepared myself for that while I was doing my really intense workout with kind of the group that I work out with. And it just felt good to kind of shake out some of those cobwebs and also to be able to reprioritize what I was going to do today. My husband left for 4 days on a trip with some friends. And so that is going to be me with the kiddos for 4 days, which I enjoy, but it's also can feel overwhelming at times. And so it was a good note to start the day off by getting some exercise and just being able to clear my head. And I'm really excited to be here with all of you. So I hope that you've done something today, no matter when you're listening to this, that is good for your heart and good for your soul. And if you haven't, I would love for you guys to just pause for a moment and think about what you're going to do today for yourself, because I think it's so important for us to be doing that on just a regular moment to moment basis. So that is my hope for all of you today. As you guys know, we are in the middle of the month of December where we're doing a theme around this idea of giving or being of service. And the episode that kind of kicked us off during this month was the episode with Beth Hassett, episode 33, where her and I spoke about she's an executive director at Weave, the local domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking agency here in Sacramento. And her and I really spoke about this, the impact that domestic violence and sexual assault has on not only the family and the individual, but also our community at large, and kind of culturally, what are we doing within our society to have really tough conversations, but very, very necessary ones. And Weave does this amazing thing. And for those of you that have listened to the episode 33, you already know this, but they just give so much back to our community. And they're just this amazing, amazing resource. And so what I wanted to really do for the month of December was highlight all of their hard work and give people an avenue to give if they felt so inclined. They have an amazing holiday toy shop where I won't go into too much detail because I know you probably already know this from the past couple episodes, but just to recap, essentially, if you've been a client of Weave during the past calendar year, they give out vouchers, which are essentially just little free cards to parents, and they get to come shop in the holiday toy shop for free and choose a number of items for their children. And they are all brand new, just beautiful toys. And it's just an amazing way to make a holiday season that's really, really tough a little bit lighter, especially for families that have been impacted by really significant trauma. So in the show notes, you'll notice for not only this episode 35, but the last two, 33 and 34, and then also next week episode, we will have the links for you to be able to go over to the Amazon wish list and actually buy gifts that will get delivered directly to Weave and then included in the holiday toy shop, as well as if you're listening to this next year, in the spring or the summer, you also can listen to it and follow to their website and give to them if you so desire, and all the other things that they do throughout the year. So that's really kind of why I wanted to highlight this idea of giving. But it was interesting because as I'm thinking of this idea and having conversations with people around kind of this concept of having this for the month of December, I got some interesting feedback, right? Some people were very inspired, and you guys have reached out, and it's been amazing. And it's been this kind of, how can I help? How can I get involved? I really want to give because, like we talked about last week, that being of service, achieving greatness in our lives is so much about being of service, not about having the right status, right? And so I've had some really amazing feedback. And also I've had some folks that kind of look at me with these very drained, overwhelmed eyes and kind of go, I'm so depleted. Enough is enough, right? Like what else can I give? Because I feel like I can barely give to those around me, such as my partner or my kids. And so, as I was thinking about this last night, kind of, my husband left for his flight at like 4 a.m. So of course I'm up for like an hour before I can fall back asleep. And I'm thinking of this idea about enough is enough, right? And I started realizing that the way that we say that is really, it kind of depends on the tone that we use when we're talking about it, like what it really means, right? So if we're talking about this idea of enough is enough, right? Like I have nothing left to give. I'm so tapped out. How can I possibly be asked to give more? And whether that's within our community, within our relationships, within our roles as, for me, mom, wife, mother, sister, therapist, daughter, that enough is enough. I'm so depleted. But I think it's really interesting to ask ourselves, what happens when we're asked to give more? Right. And that's kind of what I've been seeing come up over the week or so that I've been sharing about what's going on with the podcast with other people, is that some people, like I said, they look like they're completely taxed when I ask that question, right? What can we do to give? And they look at me and they say, or their eyes say, and we kind of talk about it, is this pressure or this overwhelm to give more and more and more, especially when they're already depleted. And upon talking with them, that when we talk about giving, and not even necessarily just financially, but giving of our time, of our expertise, of our unique gifts, that it feels like this obligation, right? Like it's just another thing we have to do. It's some box we have to check. And it was just, like I said, it kind of had me tossing and turning up last night, thinking about when we say enough is enough, like you can't ask any more of me, I'm already tapped out, we're giving a really, really significant message, right? And we're hopefully giving that message by saying, I can't do more. We're saying no and setting boundaries, but that's not often the case, right? Oftentimes we're kind of that deer in headlights where we're saying enough is enough. Like I can't give any more. I'm so tapped out. I'm absolutely, the well is run dry, right? And so in thinking about that, I started thinking about what if instead of saying enough is enough, right? I'm tapped out, I'm depleted. What if we shifted over to an acceptance when we're asked to give, which is, enough is enough. Like I don't have the financial resources to do X, but I can bake some brownies and make the people, that work at my kids' school happy, right? Like that's an example of things that, enough is enough, that what little we have to give, that we need to have this true acceptance that absolutely 100% is enough. And that this sense of obligation that we feel, or this pressure that we feel, we have to really check it and wonder, is that coming from the external kind of pressure to give, to push through, right? To be all things to all people? Or is it an internal pressure? Is it an expectation I put on myself that I have to give so much, even at the expense of myself, that there is no acceptance that enough really is enough and I'm tapped out? So that's really this idea that I want to explore a little bit today, because depending on the tone that we say that enough is enough, there's really two hugely, I don't even know if that's a word. But there's really two significant differences, right? There's the enough is enough. I don't have any more to give. What more do you want from me, right? Or, you know what? Enough is enough. This is fantastic. You have this little to give, and that is amazing. That's everything that we need in that moment, just the little bit that you were able to give. So if we think about that, right, if we are tasked right now in this moment, especially the month of December, where we are being asked from all angles to give, and here I am having a theme of a podcast for a month around this idea of giving or being of service, how do we shift from that idea that I'm so depleted, I have nothing more to give, why do you have these expectations on me? Why am I putting these expectations on myself? Instead, to this acceptance that what we are able to give in any given moment is certainly enough. Right. And so I started thinking about that because me, I want to move to a place of action. Not only are we saying, okay, here's this deep question, but what do we do with it? Right. So how do we shift into that acceptance that enough really is enough? And so part of it is the external sound check, right? It's looking at what is going on in our environment around us that is placing these expectations on us that enough isn't really enough. right? That whatever we have to give certainly isn't enough. And so I started thinking about that, and I realized that those messages, they can come from obviously the commercials on TV and all the things that we're being bombarded with to buy, but it can also come from our relationships, right? That we can have people, whether it's our parents or our siblings or our partner or even our kids, asking for more. I told you guys that obviously I left the gym today, and my gym has like a little cafe in it, which, by the way, sounds really fancy. It's not fancy. It's like a snack shack. But they have smoothies there. And so we're leaving, right? And there was a little kid at the little daycare and the kids club at the gym who had asked her mom, like, hey, Mom, will you get me a smoothie? I'd like this flavor. And so, of course, my kids are hearing this, right? And so as we're walking out of the kids club area, they said, can we get a smoothie? And I said, no, not today. And, well, why not? And I said, well, did you bring your money to buy yourself a smoothie? Well, no, we didn't. But Mom, you usually use all your money to buy stuff for us. And it was such an interesting response, right, from my 2 4-year-olds, that they see me spending money on them, which is good. Like, they need clothes, they need food. But also it was such an interesting that, no, Mom, we see you spending all your money on us. Right. And so that, to me, in that moment, if I wasn't tossing and turning with this idea last night or early this morning, or if I hadn't taken the time to go get some exercise, if I hadn't shaken those cobwebs loose, that statement for my kids could feel really, really, really like I wasn't doing enough and this big external pressure. Right. And it was an offhand comment. I didn't take it too much to heart, but it made me realize that there's these little kind of just insidious, subtle messages we can get from the people around us, our external environment, that do put that pressure on to let us know that enough isn't enough, right? Mom, you usually spend all your money on me. Why aren't you doing it now? Right? And so we had a little conversation about that, and we kind of redirected about what that really meant. But it was just this really unique opportunity for me to see that through very tired eyes, that could have felt very much like pressure and overwhelm from my external environment. And luckily in that moment, I had done some self-care before, and I was able to meet that in a much more gentle, patient way and have kind of a teachable moment there. So I think the first thing that we need to do in order to move or shift this idea of accepting that enough really is enough, we've got to check our external environment, right? We've got to really, really pay attention to that. The second piece is we have to really look at our internal environment, right? Like what's going on in terms of kind of, our head trash. And how is that impacting the decisions that we make, right? Or kind of our attitude around things. I think of this idea that we talked about last week, just very briefly. It was kind of a precursor to this week's episode. And this idea of taking care of ourselves. And is it something that is selfish or selfless, right? And I think that it is, like I said, and I alluded to last week, that it is a highly debated concept. It's a highly debated idea of whether or not taking care of ourselves is selfish or selfless, right? And so for me, I get into this debate quite often with people, and I love hearing their opposing sides of it, right? But if we're thinking about moving over to this acceptance that enough really is enough, that we need to recognize that our internal message we're sending ourselves, the criticism, the demanding more when we have nothing to give, that trying to find extra resources when we're depleted, that all comes from, I believe, this idea that taking care of ourselves is actually something that's selfish, right? That if we believed that taking care of ourselves was actually selfless, right? That taking care of ourselves, like I did this morning, knowing that I needed to get some exercise to kind of clear my head going into these next 4 days with the kiddos, that actually was a really selfless thing, right? Like, yes, it's very cold. It's California cold, right? Which means it's in like the low 40s, but it was cold this morning, and we all bundled up and we were out of the house by 8 o'clock in the morning. And, they didn't get their morning cartoon. They're watching it now, but they didn't get it like they usually do in the morning. And so there was definitely some sacrifices that were made, but that it was very selfless to be able to say, hey guys, we need to table our regular routine and get to the gym early so that I can be a better mom today. And that taking care of myself and putting aside their needs to have the warm, cozy morning or, watching their cartoon was actually not selfish at all. It was selfless because it's putting them first even more, because now I have more to give today. I've taken a little bit of time for myself. I've connected with some friends at the gym. I had a really great workout, and now I have more to give. And so we have to be really aware of what's happening internally for us. If there is a lot of head trash or a lot of negative self-talk that we have around excelling unrealistic expectations of that self-care is actually very selfish, that we have to put everybody before ourselves, that if that is our mindset, we absolutely are going to be depleted, and we are going to come to that place where enough really is enough. Like, I can't do any more. Right. So part of checking that internal environment is being able to move, or at least explore, this debate of, is self-care selfish or selfless? And if we're telling ourselves it's selfish, if we really believe that, then I really challenge you guys to kind of write in or send in your feedback via the SpeakPipe app, your audio feedback, and tell me how. Like, help me understand that, because I want to understand. I have this conversation all the times with people, especially with women, and I'm always so fascinated about their stance around self-care being selfish. And I want to know it because I think it's an important part of our dialogue, just as a kind of a culture of women. So if you want to weigh in on that, like, send it in. I want to hear your stance on that, because I very much believe that self-care is actually very selfless. But I know that I often get into very interesting debates around people around that. Okay. So in terms of shifting to this acceptance that enough is enough, we've got to check our external environment, right? We need to be very mindful of the messages that are coming in and compounding an unrealistic expectation of giving when we have nothing left to give. The other thing that we need to do is also check our internal environment, right? What is the messages that we're giving ourselves through negative self-talk, through critical thinking, that actually ends up making us more depleted and just absolutely tapped out, right? And then the third thing we need to do is that we need to prioritize what's important to us. And now this is an interesting last aspect, right? So if this is our third step kind of in this shift, that we have to prioritize what's important to us. I did a show on this. I think one of the first episodes when I first launched the podcast earlier this year was this idea of living your all, right? That we can have all that we want, but you have to prioritize what that means. And in my world, that's typically about 3 things, right? That's as many things as I can have prioritize going on in the world at the same time before I start to realize that I'm losing it, right? I'm juggling too much. And the next thing that happens then is, as I'm juggling too much, I drop it all. Right? And I'm so tapped out. I'm so depleted. So instead, what it is saying, what are my priorities? What are the things that are going high up on the list because they need to be there in order for me to feel like I'm kind of hitting the mark, right? I cannot be all things to all people. As much as I have tried in my life, I cannot twist and turn and bend that much. I'm not that flexible, right? But it's really, really important for me to be the things that I can be to those that are most important to me. So let me say that again. It's really important for me to be the most I can be for the people that are most important to me. And the most is exactly what I have to give, right? Nothing more. What I have to give is all I have to give. It's like running a budget, right? At the end of the month, when there isn't enough money to go out to eat, you don't go into the red, being able to go out to eat. You just don't go out to eat, right? It's tapped out. That resource is tapped out. You're at home. You're having, a lean cuisine and some frozen broccoli, right? And so we are the same way in terms of how we prioritize, that we need to be able to give what we can to those that matter the most. And we get to decide that, right? I don't get to decide that for you. Please, I don't want that pressure, right? And you don't get to decide that for me, but we get to decide it for ourselves. And so being able to shift this idea, this acceptance that enough really is enough, we have to be able to prioritize. So we're not in this kind of hamster wheel of being able to expect that we can be all things to all people, but instead give the most that we can to those that matter the most to us. And that, my friends, is a fluctuating measurement, right? That the most we can give on some days looks really crappy, right? I'm the first to admit that there are days where the most I have to give is so mediocre, but that's all I have to give. And so I have to really give myself grace that enough is enough. And there are other days where the most I have to give is, holy crap, like I can't replicate that for weeks on end. Like it's just in that moment, the energy's flowing, the juice is flowing, and I'm in my stride, right? And I have so much to give in that moment, but it's not sustainable. And no longer can the expectation be that it's sustainable because we did it once. Okay. So that really is my call to action for you guys, right? Is I want you to shift, especially in this month of December. And honestly, every single month, right? No matter when you're listening to this, I want you guys to grab a hold of this idea that it's not enough is enough. I have nothing left to give, but it's enough is enough. I have this much to give, and that's amazing, right? And so during this month, as we're highlighting about being of service and that is what achieves greatness, not our status, that it's being of service, that it's knowing that enough is enough, that we can do amazing things in our lives. We can do amazing things in our relationships, in our community, in our world. And so that is your guys' call to action. If you are feeling like enough is enough, I'm depleted, I want you to check your external environment. Where are you getting messages from people that you need to be more? Do more, be more, give more. Like, where are you getting those messages? And can you make shifts in those environments? Can you set boundaries? Can you have teachable moments like I did with my kids today around the smoothie? Like, what can you do with that? What can you filter out? The other is check your internal environment. Do you really believe that self-care is selfish? And how is that tripping you up from being able to take care of yourself and actually not be so depleted? And lastly, what are you prioritizing? If you're prioritizing all the wrong stuff, you're absolutely going to feel like enough is enough. I can't do it. And again, you get to decide what the right stuff is, not me, right? I don't get to decide that for you. Certainly you don't get to decide it for me, but I trust that whatever you prioritize, you have spent time thinking about and you know that it's right. Okay. So those are the three aspects. And again, if you are so inclined to give to weave, I want to encourage you to do it, even if it is the smallest thing, even if it's just prayers for those families and children that are going through and trying to heal from the trauma of domestic violence, sexual assault, or human trafficking. Prayers are enough, right? So being able to know that enough is enough, I really want to encourage you guys. And if it feels like, you know what, I want to give, I have something to give. I have these unique gifts that I want to give, but I want to keep it in my local community. Awesome. Do that, right? That's your priority. I don't get to decide that for you. So find something in your local community that feels important to give to. And like I said, if you're so inclined to give to Weave, please do head over to the show notes. You'll be able to see the link for the Amazon wish list, which is all toys that will go right into their toy shop, which are free for their the survivors that they've worked with throughout the calendar year. And then also, if you're listening to this some other point of the year and you really want to get involved, please go to their website, weaveinc.org. It's also in the show notes, and you'll be able to find ways to give back, especially when you feel like you've got abundance around you. So that's our show for today. Please reach out via your the SpeakPipe app with your audio feedback. I love hearing your guys' voices, and I love hearing your opinions on things. I love hearing your differing opinions. Like, I learn when you guys disagree with me, so that's okay. And also send in via email to Anna@herlifeunscripted.com. I can't wait to hear from you guys. And also 2016 is coming to an end. So be sure to head over to the website to herlifeunscripted.com and then just click on the retreats tab so that you can go ahead and sign up for the interest list to get information as we roll out the live events, the dates for the live events in 2017. So that is all for today. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen and to just connect. Thank you for letting me into your hearts and into your worlds. I am just truly honored. Bye, guys. Talk to you soon.
Want to learn about the latest retreats, workshops, and speaking events hosted by Anna? Head over to herlifeunscripted.com to get in on all the juicy details. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast so we can continue to grow our amazing audience. Lastly, be sure and send in your voice feedback via the SpeakPipe app or to Anna@herlifeunscripted.com. We can't wait to hear from you.